Hey everybody, welcome back to Kat's Kitchen. I'm so glad that you're back here with me, and I just want to take a few minutes and say thank you so much for taking time out of your day to spend time with me in the kitchen. It really means a lot to me, and I really appreciate all of you that have subscribed, commented, and liked my videos and even shared them, and I encourage you to please do that. And if you're new here, and share these videos to anyone that you think might benefit from them, or just you'd be encouraged to cook and can a little bit more, learn some new recipes. So yeah, I really appreciate you guys. And I also want to mention, please leave some comments down below with maybe some new recipes or new techniques that you would like to see. I am thinking about coming out with maybe some more like tutorial style videos, maybe make a series out of it, such as basics on cooking, like cooking 101, and certain type of equipment that the average home cook would need, the average home canner would need, things like that. And even we could do basics like chopping, proper ways to hold the knife, dicing, chopping, cutting meat and things of that nature. But yeah, let me know if you guys are interested in that. That's more basics 101 cooking. And everyone needs to start somewhere, and it doesn't matter how old you are or how young you are. I started cooking whenever I was probably about, I would have to ask my family, but I want to say I was probably about, I started like mixing dough and everything and doing cookies probably when I was about 3 or 4. And then from there on up, we generally started making pasta and homemade breads and things of that nature, learning how to knead and how to bake cookies and mix cookies, and then drying pasta and making bread by hand. And then we kind of graduated and moved up from there, making proteins and chopping vegetables and things of that nature. So even if you have children, it's really nice to get them involved in the kitchen. It teaches them really good skills, really good life skills, because nowadays they don't really have cooking in schools anymore. I know certain schools still do have cooking and home ec and whatnot. But yeah, so it's really important. It's a really important skill for your children and for ourselves to know how to do. Okay, so what we're going to be talking about today is, I'm sure you've heard by now if you're watching a few different YouTube cooking channels, about the Pantry challenge that a lot of people are participating in this year. And they've done it now for about 5 or 6 years in a row. It usually starts in January, and they usually let it last for a few months. What that is, if you're not privy to it, is basically where you don't go to the grocery store for that period of time, and you just try to utilize what's in your freezers and your pantry. That way you can rotate any stock that needs gone through, and that way hopefully not too much goes to waste. If nothing at all, we're hoping that nothing goes to waste out of this challenge, because that's what we're trying to do, is reuse and use up the items that really need used up, that are kind of on their last leg or close to expiration, so that we can really produce a nice product out of that. So what my goal, and the other thing is too, is the rules about it is there's really no rules. You can create your own. You can go to the grocery store if you need to go to the grocery store. The whole point of it is to kind of formulate an idea and some goals around your food stock, and what you currently have in your home, just to make your lives and your expenses a little bit easier. So that's what we're gonna do here. So what I need to do, some of my goals, is I need to clean out my freezers that I have. So as we know, food can get freezer burnt, and I don't want it to get to that point. Also, we are gonna be having another side of beef come towards the end of the month. So we need to start utilizing the rest of the food that we have in there. And I've done a pretty good job this year. I probably only have about a third left to go through that's in our freezer, which is really good. So I have a list of recipes here that I'd like to make, and some we're going to eat now, some we may can, and the others I'm going to probably make freezer meals out of them. I've calculated that I think if we clear out my basement freezer and the freezer I have up here on top of my refrigerator, I can put the freezer meals up here, and then I can have the basement available for the protein that's coming at the end of the month. So that's kind of my strategy, because all the meals that we're going to be making, we wouldn't be able to go through otherwise, unless we need to give some away, which I am more than happy to do that if family or friends are in need. I will never waste any food. I was brought up that way. If someone is in need of it, I would rather give it to them than waste it. So that's kind of my motto, and that's kind of what I stick by, because it's too expensive, especially nowadays, to buy food and have it go to waste. I would rather create it into something new, and either give it away or put it in the freezer for us to eat later on. Okay, so here's the things that we're going to be eating and making. We're going to do stuffed cabbage, tortilla crusted chicken. And what I want to do with that is I have some tortilla chips that we had opened around the holidays. They're still good, but they're a little stale. So what I want to do is crunch them up and kind of make like a breadcrumb out of them. And then we're going to, probably cut our chicken breasts in half. And we're going to bread our chicken breasts in the tortillas, bake them off, make them nice and crispy. You can also air fry them. And then we can basically use that for anything. I can use that for chicken parm. I can do like just bread it up, put it on salad or a sandwich. I can do a lot with that. I have some eggplant and zucchini. We're going to be utilizing that in a lot of our recipes as well. And you can do so much with eggplant. It's really, really good. And so that's what we're going to be working on with the chicken. I'm also going to make chicken and beef enchiladas. So we're going to be making our own enchilada sauce again. I have done that on a previous video. So if you'd like a step-by-step, I would definitely maybe go back to that video and take a look. That was a really, really good sauce that I made. We're also going to be making some stroganoff, and we're probably going to have that for dinner tonight. So that's one of the main meals that I'm going to make predominantly today. And then we're going to be making probably some taco soup, because Mark really likes that. He likes the Max and Irma's taco soup. And I have some corn on the cob in there that we got from the farm that I had blanched, last year whenever we got it fresh, husked and blanched it. And then I put it in the freezer bag for the freezer. So that's another thing that we're going to be utilizing, that corn on the cob. And let's see here, French onion soup, we're gonna can that. So over the weekend, me and my friend Corey, we made French onion soup, and that was so delicious. Actually, I made it a little bit incorrectly, because you're supposed to saute the onions with some olive oil before you add in your broth. And I was just making it so fast. I had put the broth in, put the onions in, and I was all reared up to go. I was seasoning it and everything, and then I checked the recipe and I'm like, oh gosh. So everyone makes mistakes sometimes. It's no big deal. It ended up tasting marvelous though. I ended up having about a third of a cup of port wine, and I put that in with the broth and just let it cook in with the onions for like a few hours with some salt, pepper, a little bit of Italian seasoning, garlic and onion powder, along with all those onions that we had from the farm. Oh my gosh, it was so amazing. It was so like rich with flavor, because the one recipe I did look up after I had mixed everything together called for white wine, and I didn't have white wine open, but I had the port wine open, and it was gorgeous. So definitely try that out if you haven't. So what we're doing with the leftovers today, we ate that for a couple days. So with the leftovers, I had 3 more quarts, and I have them in my pressure canner right now. And our pressure canner it'll be venting here in just a few moments. So we're gonna pressure can the rest of that. That way these new recipes that we're making, my plan is to kind of keep each of these meals for the rest of the week for lunches and dinners. And then I'm basically gonna freeze all the abundance that's on top of that. That's kind of how I'm going to orchestrate this week. So that's in the works already, the French onion soup. The other thing I may make, these are like maybes, is maybe a meat sauce. It's really nice to have a meat sauce on hand. I may can that depending on how much time I have. The other things is I want to make a meat pie with mashed potatoes. So that's another freezer pie. That's a freezer meal that I'd like to make. So kind of like a shepherd's pie or a mincemeat pie, where you have your just your veggies, your ground beef, seasoning, and if you have a little bit of red wine, you can do that too to make like a nice sauce out of it. And then we'll put that in the bottom of the pan, and then with mashed potatoes on top of it, and then we'll freeze that for a freezer meal. And then when we pull that out to bake it, it's going to be scrumptious. Now you can make the meat pies a few different ways. You can make them like that, or you can actually make them with an actual crust, like a pie crust. So depending on what kind you want, you know, work with your own resources and what you have. So that's kind of what this whole challenge is about. We still have a lot of good potatoes from the farm that are going to be needing to used up within these next few months. So that's why I figured that would be a good use for those. And then the other thing I'd like to make are some apple pie hand pies, just some small ones for Mark and I. Every time I make a whole like 9-inch pie, we feel like we have to eat it, and then sometimes it's just too much for him and I don't want us to ever feel like we have to like eat through desserts. We don't eat a lot of desserts around here, but when we do, they're usually homemade at least. So what I thought of doing, and I saw this over at Becky from Acre Homestead, and she was making hand pies this past year, and I was like, that would be a great idea for him and I, because we could either split one depending on how big they are. You just pull them out of the freezer, throw them in the toaster oven to warm up a little bit, and then we can either split one or have one of our own, depending on how large they are, of course. So that's the main plan. And the reason why I said apple pie hand pies is because I had frozen a bag of apple pie filling. So last year I did can some, and then I also froze 1 gallon bag. So 1 gallon bag will basically fill a 9-inch pie pan. So that's generally what we're going to be doing. I'm probably going to have to do this cooking over the course of a few days. So stick with me. I might make a few videos. I might just make one big one. I'm not sure yet. But yeah, so I appreciate you guys hanging out with me. And I am this year going to try to get better on recipe making and all that. I'm going to try to figure out what blog would be the best for me to, you know, contribute to and share to you guys. That's one thing. If you have any suggestions on that, please let me know. I have heard of a few, but I want to get really honed in on like what would be the best one for our community here. That way I can just put the link in the description box below, then you can go and search for the recipe. That would probably be the most efficient way, especially because we make so many different recipes at once sometimes. So I appreciate you guys. Hang in there with me, and I'm going to show you what we have started so far and what we're doing for our recipes today. All right, everybody. So like I said, I have my 3 quarts of French onion soup in our canner right now. It's still working its way on venting. It hasn't vented yet. The processing time for my elevation is going to be 11 pounds at 75 minutes. So that is going to be good there. And back here I've got some rice cooking. I've got 1 cup of rice to 1 cup of water with about 2 teaspoons of white wine vinegar and a good heavy pinch of salt. So that's going to be cooking up for our stuffed cabbages. Alright guys, so here's what we're going to do with our cabbage. Is we're going to blanch it. I'm just going to take off maybe 1 or 2 of the outer leaves that don't look so great. And then I'm going to cut the core out here. So we're just going to cut a square right around the core. So just put your knife in, push down, and just try to make a nice cut straight down to where you're connecting your 4 corners. And I have a pot on the stove right now with some water heating up where we're going to toss these into it. And then you should be able to pull out your core now, like that. Perfect. And then you can do 1 of 2 things. You can toss it in your water like this, or you can try to open up the leaves if you want. Sometimes if you do too much of this, it'll break the leaves, and we don't want to do that because we want them to be able to hold our stuffing without them breaking on us. So I might do a couple. So what we're doing is when we're blanching these is we're making this inner stem here a little bit softer, Now we may have to, and these ribs here, you'll see all these little things here. We may have to cut this out too. It's still maybe too hard for us to roll without cracking. But we at least want to make this a little bit more pliable. So I'm just going to go ahead and toss this in our water. And I have another one too. They're not very big. But cabbage is so affordable. Since we're talking about affordable cost for cooking and everything, I do like to discuss that too. Cabbage is so affordable. Not a lot of people, it seems like, either make a lot of things out of it or like to use it for some reason. I like to use it in a few different recipes. I like to make coleslaw out of it. Obviously we have ground beef, so today we're going to be making some nice stuffed cabbage. That's always a winner, and that's an easy freezer meal to have in a pan, and then you can just pop that out and heat it up. Because believe me, there are a lot of days I do not feel like cooking either, but there's a lot of days that I do feel like cooking, so it just gives you more options. Here's another one. If you just cut around there and just kind of work on it, move it back and forth, the whole core will pop out like this, and that's perfect. Okay, and then I'm just gonna toss this in the water with the other one, and I'm gonna pop our lid on, and I'm just gonna kind of let that cook on mid-high for a minute. Our rice is starting to boil a little bit. I'm gonna fluff it up here. Okay, everybody, so now we're gonna season up our mix to go inside of our stuffed cabbages. So here I have 2 pounds of rinsed ground beef. I have about a medium-sized onion chopped up. And then we're gonna season this and mix it up for our cabbage that's cooling right now. You'll know when your cabbage is done, you'll be able to almost pierce it with your knife. It'll be nice and soft. It should still be bright in color if you catch it in time. Mine got a little bit darker than I wanted, but that's okay. I have a cooling over here in a colander. I'm just spraying it with some cool water to help stop the cooking process, and that'll be good for us. Okay, so I just added 1 egg to this mix. Now we're gonna add in the rest of our spices: salt and pepper, garlic, onion powder, minced garlic and garlic powder. We're gonna do some Worcestershire sauce, and that is about it for this one. And you know what, I apologize, I'm gonna add in a little bit of parsley also to this. There are some of these recipes that call for a little bit of nutmeg and cinnamon if you'd like to have those kind of flavors. Kind of like a Greek style. I know Greek cooking, they use a lot of cinnamon and nutmeg. I might do that to ours just to give it a little bit of different taste this time. Definitely an experiment. But sometimes when I've made spanakopita before, which is a Greek lasagna dish. We use cinnamon and nutmeg for the bechamel sauce, which is a white sauce. So I think, just for being adventurous, I am going to add a little bit of cinnamon to this, and not too much. For 2 pounds, I think the recipe, well, for 1 pound, the recipe called for a teaspoon of cinnamon. I'm going to go even less than that. I'm going to probably do like a half a teaspoon for 2 pounds. And then I'm going to do the same with the nutmeg, just because I do want a little bit of different flavor to this. But I really don't want to taste these notes predominantly. I just kind of want them to kind of hit you hit your palette in the background. Be like a background note. Okay, I'm gonna get some gloves on and then we're just gonna mix this up. All right, so we're just gonna give this a good mix. And I do want to mention, I did make sure that my dishwasher was unloaded so that I could, to make for easier cleanup, as well as my garbage can was emptied as well with a new liner. And this meat I actually took out of the freezer a couple days ago so it could thaw in the refrigerator. So some of this beef is still a little bit frozen, but we can still work with it. You can see me just trying to pull it apart here. Just gonna get in there and give it a nice good mix. And then we're gonna add our rice to this mix as well. And then once our cabbage is nicely cooled and we can work with it without getting burned, I'm going to then start assembling our cabbage rolls. Should be fairly well cooled as well. I'm gonna put about 2/3 of this in, give it a mix and see what else it needs. The rice is still a little bit warm, so hopefully it'll help break up this ground beef that's still a little cool. And I can tell the rice is the perfect texture. I know a lot of people like making their rice in the Instant Pot now. I don't really have one, or a rice maker. I don't have that either. My kitchen is so small, I really try to keep myself limited on the gadgets, which I'm okay with. I'm perfectly fine with that. I mean, I can make rice on the stove in a matter of 20 minutes. So I don't really worry too much about that. And usually it's a 1-to-1 ratio when it comes with rice, if you're curious. So 1 cup of rice to 1 cup of water, and then always make sure you season it with salt. And I always like to add white wine vinegar. You don't have to do that, but that's what a lot of the Asian cultures do, and I really like that flavor that it brings. Actually, a lot of cultures do that. So check that out. I actually am going to add in some more rice so that we'll actually get more out of our mix here. It'll stretch a little farther. All right. And then I opened up 3 cans of, I have two cans of diced and 2 cans of stewed tomatoes. So I'm just gonna take our nicely blanched cabbage here, sorry, and you can see it peels apart really, really easily without breaking the leaves. That's really what we want. So I'm just gonna get a few going here so you can see how I pack and roll these. So I'm just going to get these out of here so you can see me roll one specifically. Now, if this is too hard still, just take your knife and you're just going to cut along that stem. 1, and then there's going to be like a little V cut out. And I'll show you that. Like this. You're just going to cut that bottom stem out. And then when you roll it and you bake it, you're not going to have that hard, crunchy piece. Now for kale and cabbage, the cruciferous vegetables, usually you have to do it that way. That's why we boil it a little bit to soften that up. But if it's not softened enough, we end up having to cut it out, which is okay. Now the smaller cabbage leaves are usually tender enough that you don't have to cut it out. But just use your own discretion on that. So I'm just going to chop these out. cabbage is so good for you. All vegetables are so good, obviously. They each have a different purpose. I just really like working with vegetables. Okay, so I'm going to show you here what we've got. I'm just going to use the same spoon that I used to cook my rice in. That way we're not dirtying another spoon. And I'm going to take about what I think it needs for that size leaf and just start putting that in here. And just reminding myself I have 2 heads of cabbage to go through. So once you have it here, I'm just going to kind of tuck and roll, kind of like a burrito. So I'm going to hold that there. And because it's raw meat, it's really easy to maneuver and to mold into what shape you want. And then I'm just going to try to roll this on top of it itself so that it kind of seals itself. And this is what you're looking for here. Nice. And then we're going to put this seam side down in our pan of tomato juice. And then we're just going to keep working this, guys. I'll show you a few more. But this is going to take a little while to roll all this out. And you can get a little assembly line going. You can, after you've trimmed out those stems, you can pop a few down at once. And then just roll all at the same time. Make it a little faster for you. I am glad that we added the cinnamon and nutmeg because I think it's really going to be interesting to see how that tastes. Like I said, I've heard of Moroccan cooking and the Grecian cooking. They often use those spices in their meat or in their savory cooking, which is really going to be interesting to see if we like that. But I think we really will because, like I said, I have done that before. At least so it'll give it a totally different flavor from like the last time we made freezer meals. I made stuffed bell peppers. And that was a lot of fun. And that was a big hit too. Mark really liked those. Mark grew up with these type of foods, and so did I. So it's kind of nice to evolve them a little bit and maybe make them a little different ways than we're traditionally used to. Because a lot of these foods can be made so many different ways with so many different ingredients and flavors. So we're kind of excited about that. Kind of taking staples and putting a new twist on them and maybe adding different flavor or even more flavor to them at some points. Now I am just rolling, as you can see here, and I'm just packing them into our pan as neatly as you can. And you can put it however many you need for one meal, or if you want this to last you for a couple meals, go ahead and do that. Now when you get down to the inner leaves, you can do a few things with that. They are the younger leaves, they're more tender. I still like to stuff them if I can, or what I'll do is if they're really tiny, is I'll just slice them up and I'll sprinkle them in my pan with me so that we can still eat it. It's not going to waste. And then we can just kind of eat it whenever we, heat up and bake our cabbage rolls. Because sometimes they can be a little tricky to roll if they're really small like that. So unless maybe it's a child's portion, that would be good for a little child's portion. Just putting like a little, the only thing you could probably fit in here is maybe a tablespoon at most. I'd say maybe a half a tablespoon of mix in there. But yeah, these stems still need chopped up, and these are like the medium-sized stems compared to what we were just working with the large ones. But the real little baby ones, those ones don't need cut out. I think they're tender enough. And what you can do is test it by just putting your knife on it. This one needs cut out, but the little tiny ones are going to be okay. Yeah, if you can put your knife on it and you think it's okay, then just go with that. Otherwise, go ahead and chop it out. So I'm just going to keep rolling here, keep using my mix and using my other head of cabbage and filling up my pans. And I'll see you guys back here in just a few moments. All right, guys, so now we're going to be working on our enchiladas. I have 2 chicken legs in here, bone in, skin on. And then I have one large round roast in here in my other crock pot. So what we're gonna do is we're just gonna season these up. They're already been rinsed and drained. We're just gonna season these up really good. We're gonna pop them on the crock pot so that they can cook for us while we're making the other dishes. All right, so I'm gonna start off with some garlic powder in both. I'm gonna be seasoning both of these the same for the most part. I might change it up a little bit, but for the most part, we're gonna season them the same on both sides. And I'm gonna hit it with some onion powder. Then we're gonna go in with some cumin. Some red pepper flake. As much as you like spice, go ahead and season it to your liking for the spice. And then we're gonna hit it with some salt and pepper. And I'm gonna let these cook low and slow, probably for a good low for 8 hours. And then if I don't end up completing these tomorrow, I'll just let them cool down, or tonight rather, I'll let them cool down, put them in the fridge, and then I can complete them tomorrow. But at least the meat will be cooking for me, which will be helpful. All right, now we're gonna add some cilantro. Paprika. You can also add some chili powder if you like a little bit more spice and kick. Alrighty, and then now for some wet ingredients, we're going to add some worcestershire. And I'm going to add in some Dijon mustard. Just going to put a little bit in here, about a tablespoon. And then I also have some, I also want to put in some ranch packets in here. I had them in my cupboard, and I know they don't last forever. These are still good in date. I wanted to put them in there as well, one in each. Just to help make this flavor a little bit more robust. Okay, and to that, I'm also going to add in some minced garlic. Two tablespoons to each, roughly. 2.5 maybe for the roast because it's bigger. And then I'm going to actually add in some pickle juice for my, and some pickles for my bread and butter pickle container. This is going to add a little bit of sweetness. And I'm also going to add in some pickles to this too. I'm going to go ahead and finish this jar. Just split that up. That was about 2/3 of a jar I just split between both of them. And then next I have some leftover salsa. I'm going to split that up between both. Which isn't an incredible amount, but it'll help give it some flavor. And I'm going to take a little bit of filtered water and clean out our salsa jar here. Shake. I would rather the fluid come from things like this rather than just putting water in there, because I want to maximize the flavors that we can. Now if I need to add a little bit of water, I don't mind because we have so much seasoning in here now. So what I'm going to do is just add probably about 1/8 of a cup of water to each of these, and then I'm going to put them on our crock pots. Like I said, low for about 8 hours for both of these. Okay, everybody, so I am done with my 2 pans of stuffed cabbage. I put some more tomato juice on top and a can each of our diced tomatoes, and then I seasoned it with some more onion, garlic, salt, a little bit of salt and pepper, and then we're just going to wrap it up with our foil here. I have this one already done. I'm going to label this one and date it, and then we're going to put it in our upstairs refrigerator freezer. That way it'll be all set and we can continue to clean out the basement freezer. So next, and our stuff over here is still doing good. Our chicken, I'm going to have to mix this up in a minute. It's just cooking really, really slow. And then our round roast here. I noticed the crock pots that have the locking mechanism on the sides, they seem to cook a little bit faster because they retain a little bit more heat and steam. But this is what I have, so this is what we're using. At least these both have timers on them. Power for 8 on both, low for 8. And yeah, in about 10 minutes or so, don't mind the mess because this is everyday cooking here. But in about 10 minutes, we're gonna be able to shut off our canner, and then we'll let this cool down completely, and we'll crack the lid, we'll let the steam come out, and then I'll let it sit for another 10 to 15 more minutes before I pull out our jars of our onion soup. So here we go. So next, I just gotta figure out what I'm gonna make next, and I'll bring you guys back once I've decided that. All right, everybody, so we are back and we're starting our beef stroganoff. I'm just sauteing 2 onions right now, 2 medium-sized onions with some salt, pepper, and olive oil. They're just about ready. Alrighty, so I just put 2 pounds of ground beef in our pan, and I'll leave you the recipe down in the description box because we're doubling this recipe. So what we're going to do now is season this up. We're going to go with some salt and pepper, and then garlic and onion powder, parsley, paprika, some Dijon mustard, minced garlic, worcestershire sauce, and I'm going to put some Italian seasoning also in this one. That was my oven. I just preheated it to 350 so that I could roast some zucchini for dinner. So we're going to be having the stroganoff for dinner tonight, and then also I'm going to freeze whatever we have left over for some freezer meals since we're doubling this recipe. And because I put that beef in our pot, I now have to kick up the temperature because now it's starting to cool down. Just adding our Italian seasoning right now. Paprika. This was a long day of cooking, but it really feels good to get a good bit of these dishes done. I'm just adding in now about 3 tablespoons of garlic, minced garlic. Our crock pots are still going with the enchilada chicken and beef. We're going to work on that tomorrow, so I'm just going to let it cook for the rest of the day, cool down. We'll put it in the refrigerator, and then tomorrow we'll make the rest of it and assemble it together. So what we're gonna try to do is just brown up this beef before we put in our liquid ingredients. Our liquid ingredients is the Worcestershire, the Dijon mustard, and then we're going to be adding in some beef broth and a little bit of wine. You can use red or white. I have Pinot Grigio, so that's what I'm going to be using. If I had port wine, that would be great for it too, but I used all that in the French onion soup that I just made the other day. So that's also good. It'll add a little bit of richness and depth to it. And then, yeah, Worcestershire sauce, Dijon, wine, and then beef broth. Those are going to be our wet ingredients. So I'm just going to let this come together and brown up. And then once this is brown, I'm going to then add my 2 packs of, I have white mushrooms here. You can use whatever type of mushroom you like. The white is more affordable, especially if you slice them yourself, and that's what I did. And so yeah, onions are good to go. The meat's in there now. Everything is seasoned. Make sure you season every layer. Once I put my mushrooms in, I'm going to salt and pepper again, mix it all up, and then I'm going to start adding in my wet ingredients, and then I'm going to let this cook for a little while, and then towards the end I'm going to put in my sour cream, and then in a separate pot I'm going to cook my egg noodles. And then we're pretty much good. That's pretty much all it needs. So I'm just going to put a lid on this so that it can start to cook and brown up, and turn up the flame a little bit. So I'll see you guys back here once it's a little bit more done so that I can show you what it looks like from there. So like I said, I'm just going to start off with 1 pound of our sour cream and see what more we might need. Since we double this recipe, we very well may need 2 pounds of our sour cream. If you never had stroganoff, basically it's just like beef with mushrooms and a beef gravy with noodles. That's really all it is. It's really tasty. It's actually one of my sister's favorites. My dad always makes a really, really good pot of beef stroganoff. That's usually what she asked for her birthday. Alrighty. So we're going to give this a mix now. It'll obviously lighten the color. It's also going to add a little bit of tang to the sauce. So I'm just going to mix this up really good. We'll give it a little taste test, and we'll see if we need to add any more. So far the color is looking spot on with just 1 pound. Okay, I'm just going to taste this. Ooh, that's really, really good. I'm going to see. I think it is missing just a little bit of something. I'm going to go back in with a spoon just to get a little bit more of a taste. It's really good. It's almost there. I just feel like it needs a little bit of something. I'm going to add some more parsley. More pepper. You might be able to hear our noodles in the background. The pot is boiling, so don't mind that. And add a little bit more Worcestershire and some Dijon. I feel like those 2 flavors are really, that and the sour cream is really what's making this dish. And then a little bit more Italian. And I'm going to add some more minced garlic in there too. And this kind of, dish gets better whenever you cook it a little bit longer. So what I'm going to do is just let this cook a little bit longer. And if I make any more modifications to it, I'll definitely let you know. But I think honestly this is going to be perfect. I don't think it's going to need much more than this. If anything, maybe a dash of salt. But yeah, so our dinner is pretty much done. Once our noodles are done and our sauce comes up to the flavors that we want. And I'll give you a look here of what it's looking like. Alrighty guys, so this is what we have so far with our stroganoff. Now I added the beef bouillon and the water to make a beef broth. And then I also added a little bit of flour at a time to help thicken it up and make it more like a gravy. And now we're to the point where it's tasting really good. I did have to add a little bit more of each seasoning just to bring it up to par. Now we're gonna start adding our sour cream. I'm gonna see how much I need to add for this quantity. So we're gonna start with 1 pound sour cream. And then I did drop our egg noodles too. They are in there right now with heavily salted water. So we're gonna add some sour cream to this and see how much more we need. All right, everybody, here's our stroganoff. It turned out really, really nice with our zucchini. And so this is the final product. So we're gonna have this for dinner tonight and maybe a few other meals, and then probably make a freezer meal out of the rest. So thank you guys so much for watching today. I'll be starting a new video tomorrow on the rest of the freezer meals so that you can see all about that. So please like, share, and subscribe, guys, and I'll see you on the next one. Bye-bye.